Chapter 31 Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 31, Training. Early the next morning, with Dai Yao's training situation sorted, next was Zhu Zhuqing's. After hearing what kind of environment Zhu Zhuqing needed, Feng Wudong said, surprised, perfect. The dark environment you need, Zhu Qing, is right here. Where? Dai Yao asked. Behind the waterfall. There's a cave hidden back there. It's pretty big, and it's nice and dark. Perfect for you to train. They went to the waterfall, used their soul power to get through it, and found the cave. Zhu Zhuqing was thrilled. She could feel that the energy in the cave resonated with her spirit. Training there would be super effective. She nodded to Dai Yao, meaning they didn't need to search for a special environment for her. Alright, Zhu Qing, you can train here. Let me know if you need anything. After leaving the cave and heading back to the pool, Dai Yao looked at the waterfall, a bit nervous. As the sun rose, it cast a golden glow on the cascading water. Dai Yao stripped down to his underwear and did some stretches. It was still winter, and freezing. Without his soul power protecting him, he wouldn't dare do this. Feng Wudong glanced at Dai Yao's body and thought, how is this guy so scrawny? All that royal pampering went to waste. Without a word, Dai Yao ran barefoot under the pounding waterfall. He stood on a big rock, using his soul power to resist the force of the water. The current kept throwing him off balance, and he slipped and fell into the water with a splash. Dai Yao crawled out, soaked, and trudged back to shore. What are you doing? Feng Wudong asked, surprised. Training. Shaking her head, Feng Wudong thought, using soul power to fight that waterfall is a good idea, but it's way too brutal. No way this spoiled prince can handle that. Dai Yao, drenched, went back under the waterfall. This time, he sat on a rock. It was easier to stay balanced that way. He knew training under the waterfall was torture, but if he wanted to survive the fight for the throne, he had to push through. Days turned into nights, and time flew by. 10 days later, Dai Yao sat under the waterfall, soaked, using his soul power to endure the constant pounding for a full hour. Just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, he broke through a barrier that had been holding him back. With a bang, an invisible force burst from his body, sending sprays of water everywhere. The waterfall even paused for a split second before crashing down with even more force, knocking Dai Yao into the water. Though he was soaked again, he wasn't discouraged. He was pumped. Finally, I broke through to level 12 soul power. Dai Yao's soul power was in liquid form, while most soul masters was gaseous. That meant it took way more energy for him to level up from 11 to 12 than it would for a regular soul master, but it also meant his soul power was way stronger. His soul skills packed more punch, and he could keep them going longer. That's why Dai Yao was only at level 11 soul power after absorbing 700 years worth of soul rings. On the shore, Feng Wudong, wearing her fiery red clothes, smiled. She was happy for Dai Yao's breakthrough. She'd watched him exhaust his soul power, fall into the water, recover a little, and then jump right back into the waterfall, over and over. At first, she hadn't thought he'd last, but then she was amazed, and finally, she admired him. Dai Yao wasn't acting like a pampered noble at all. He was more like a dedicated ascetic. She didn't know why Dai Yao was putting himself through this, but seeing him get results through hard work made her happy for him. At the same time, something was happening in the cave behind the waterfall. A beautiful figure in black came through the waterfall and appeared before Dai Yao. Zhu Zhuqing's face lit up, and she gave Dai Yao a dazzling smile, saying, I broke through too. I'm at level 10 now. As soon as I get my soul ring, I'll be a real soul master. That with Dai Yao around, it had only taken Zhu Zhuqing a little over 20 days to break through. Without him, it would have taken her a month. That was a serious jump in training speed. Double win. When are you going to hunt for your spirit beast? Dai Yao could feel Zhu Zhuqing's excitement. She was usually so cold and reserved. I'm going back to my family tomorrow. I'll be back as soon as I can. Zhu Zhuqing walked over to Dai Yao, leaned close to his ear, and whispered, You'll miss me, right? Looking at the slightly bashful Zhu Zhuqing, whose face was flushed, Dai Yao blinked. This probably took a lot of courage for her. Asterisk, is this really Zhu Zhuqing? She doesn't seem like an ice queen at all. Zhu Zhuqing disappeared into the forest, waving to Dai Yao, and said softly, I'm off, bye. Dai Yao smiled and waved back. The Zhu Zhuqing he was seeing now was probably the real her. She'd had to freeze herself to survive the cutthroat environment of her family, though the shadow of the throne was still looming, she wasn't alone anymore. Dai Yao would be there with her. Feng Wudong looked at them, envious. They supported each other, cared for each other. That kind of love sounded amazing. The air was thick with romance. Unbeknownst to Dai Yao, with the breakthrough in his soul power, the chaotic green lotus in his mind bloomed its second petal. Star Luo Royal Academy. In the middle of a grassy field, a tall, powerful man sat cross-legged. He exhaled slowly, coming out of his meditative state, and asked casually, anything big happening at the academy lately? A student zipped over, using their soul power to get there fast, eager to deliver their report. Boss, nothing major. The first and second princes have been bickering a lot, just minor stuff. Oh, and someone took over one of the training spots in the mimicry ground that usually reserved for us commoners. Took it over. They're really testing me. The man's eyes flashed, his casual tone full of threat. This was Nantian, the 29th level battle soul master, someone you didn't want to mess with. His spirit was the black armor crazy lion, one of the top beast spirits. The commoner student who had the training spot taken was named Feng Wudong. She didn't leave after it happened. Knowing those nobles, I'm afraid she. The student looked at Nantian, worried. I know what you mean. You're saying she surrendered to those nobles, and offered her body as a trade. Nothing shocking. Nantian scoffed. You have to earn your respect. Some people are happy to be dogs, so we don't need to stop them. But Feng Wudong used to be one of us, so we can't let her get bullied. Let's go see who took her spot. Chapter 32, Meeting Dai Yaming again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 32, Meeting Dai Yaming again. The sun dipped below the western mountains. Dai Yao waded ashore, waited for his clothes to mostly dry, and headed home. Thanks to Zhang Xiaofan, the college construction crew had arrived the day after his duel with Feng Wudong. At Dai Yao's request, they built a simple house, using ordinary wood for the beams and ceramic tiles for the roof. Truth was, he couldn't afford anything fancier. Feng Wudong had commented, this definitely doesn't look like a place a noble would live. After changing, Dai Yao yelled towards the house, time to eat. That the cafeteria was at the college, which meant he had to go back for every meal. Dai Yao found it annoying, a waste of his training time. A clear cry rang out, and a fiery red figure appeared over the house, landing in front of him a split second later. Let's go, Feng Wudong said, beaming, surging with soul power. Feng Wudong became a streak of red, shooting across the sky toward the academy. Dai Yao had to use explosive bursts of speed, weaving through the forest to keep up. College cafeteria. The divide between nobles and commoners was crystal clear. The first floor was packed with commoner soul masters, all noisy and laughing. The nobles occupied the second floor. It was quiet, their movements graceful. The only sounds were the clinking of silverware against plates. They occasionally glanced down at the commoners, their eyes full of disdain. Their superior attitude rubbed the first floor soul masters the wrong way. What's their deal? So they had a good background? If I had their advantages, I'd be a great soul master by now. Envy dripped from their words. One day, I'll be a noble. Amidst the din, Dai Yao and his companion arrived at the cafeteria. As a prince, you should go to the second floor, Feng Wudong reminded him. As Dai Yao reached the second floor landing, he was stopped. Get out of here. This isn't a place for lowlifes like you, a guard snapped, shoving at Dai Yao. A purple and gold card appeared in Dai Yao's hand. He looked at the guards and said coolly, now, can I eat dinner on the second floor? The guard inspected the card closely and was shocked. The guards exchanged glances, surprise written all over their faces. You're with the vice dean. Please, come right this way. Their attitude changed instantly, becoming obsequious. Dai Yao didn't fault them for looking down on him. He wasn't exactly dressed like royalty. Besides, it was a dog-eat-dog world. He was stopped by a few guards, that's just how things were. He pocketed the card and started forward, only to be stopped again. He looked up and saw the fat guy who hung around the second prince. The fat guy pointed at the floor in front of Dai Yao and said smugly, "The second prince has spoken. This place isn't for you. You belong downstairs." Nearby, the second prince looked at Dai Yao with a faint smile. "As a prince, you're going to block me?" Dai Yao saw the malicious grin and cursed himself for being careless. He'd relaxed his guard after his breakthrough and walked right into the second prince's trap. This was going to get ugly. "Oh, look at you. You don't look like a prince in those clothes. Anyone would think you're a beggar. You're just going to taint the honor of the nobles by being in this restaurant." The fat guy said with mock horror. The nobles eating all nodded, not wanting to eat with Dai Yao looking like a commoner. Dai Yao tried to use his princely status to intimidate the fat guy, but the fat guy used Dai Yao's clothes to accuse him of disrespecting the nobles, uniting them against him. Even if the royal family wanted to punish him, he'd have an excuse, and with the second prince backing him up, how could anyone punish the fat guy? "So I'm not allowed to eat here?" Dai Yao's voice was calm, hiding the rage boiling inside him. Was it really a joke that a noble prince couldn't dine in the noble dining area? He'd be the laughingstock of the Royal Academy. The fat guy smirked, summoning his martial soul. 2 yellow soul rings flashed, and invisible pressure washed over Dai Yao. "Are you going down on your own, or do I have to help you?" The fat guy's smile was cruel. The commotion on the second floor drew the attention of the first floor. Everyone looked up, whispering when they understood what was happening. "Since when did the Empire have a 4th prince? I've never heard of him. He was recently knighted. I just don't know how he managed to get on the nobles' bad side," a well-informed person explained. Dai Yao briefly compared his strength to Fatty's and realized he had no chance. Gritting his teeth, he slowly walked back downstairs. The second prince, Yaming, leaned on the railing, looking down at Dai Yao. "You told me I wouldn't regret what I did. I have no regrets." Hearing Yaming's taunt, Dai Yao didn't look back. Respect had to be earned. He was no match for the second prince, yet. He needed time to realize his potential. Then, Yaming wouldn't stand a chance. He needed to be patient. The commoner soul masters on the first floor were also talking. Why was the 4th prince kicked out? Someone asked, craning their neck. What a loser. He's a prince who can't stand up for himself. If someone insulted me like that, I'd fight to the death, someone said, looking down on Dai Yao. Reaching the first floor, Dai Yao found an empty seat and started eating, ignoring the stares. A noble eating in our commoner cafeteria? What a joke. The onlookers all glared at Dai Yao. Normally, the nobles acted superior. Now that a noble had been knocked down, they were eager to kick him while he was down. Can't you guys just give it a rest? A fiery figure pushed through the crowd and stood by Dai Yao's side. Can't you show a little compassion? Feng Wudong scolded them. You must have a thing for him, huh? Do you want to be his princess? Do you think he'll remember your kindness if you help him? Aristocrats are ruthless. They'll never remember your kindness. The onlookers' crude comments made Feng Wudong furious. Just as she was about to snap back, a hand landed on her shoulder. Thanks for sticking up for me, but this is my fight. You shouldn't get involved. It won't do you any good. Dai Yao's expression was calm, unaffected by the second prince's humiliation. He walked out of the cafeteria, glancing back at the second floor. Dai Yaming was watching him, raising his glass, his mockery even more pronounced. Taking a deep breath, he stepped outside. He was about to head back for training when he saw someone he didn't expect. Chapter 33 Goodbye Dai Mubai. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 33 Goodbye Dai Mubai. Dai Yao's attention was snagged by the trio strolling by, a guy flanked by 2 women. He had an arm around each of them, both gorgeous and slender. What really stood out was that they were identical twins. The man himself was handsome and swaggering, with a determined face and a devil-may-care attitude, completely plastered. Dai Yao could catch the boozy scent even from several yards away. It was none other than Dai Mubai. The third prince is at it again. He's gotten a lot more into the party scene lately, one nobleman quipped. These royals are rolling in dough, always out partying, but these women are just after a free ride. A soul master from a more humble background grumbled, clearly envious, but Dai Yao saw something beyond the partying, a sense of defeat in Dai Mubai's eyes. He'd given up, remembering how fired up he was in the arena not long ago. Dai Yao sighed, feeling a pang of sadness. Since getting to the academy, he'd heard that Dai Mubai had traded serious training for a life of leisure and indulgence. But how could a soul master just coast like that? Dedication and grit are what it takes. Dai Yao spotted Dai Mubai, and Dai Mubai noticed him too. Dai Mubai flinched, his eyes darted away, and he sped up, hurrying away without a word. Dai Yao's heart sank. The duel loss had knocked Dai Mubai off course. If Dai Yao failed to win the throne, this could be his future. No way, I can't let that happen. Dai Yao clenched his fists, determined to get stronger, fast. Channeling his soul power into his legs, he dashed out of the teaching area, headed for the forest, and back to his training spot. Days flew by. Dai Yao showed up at the teaching area every morning to soak up the basics of soul mastery. The rest of his time was spent cramming. He was learning to identify soul beasts, estimate their age, understand their weaknesses, and stay on top of the latest ideas in the soul master world. He'd always felt that, setting aside his knowledge of twin martial spirits, the most valuable stuff Tang San learned from the master in the original story was about spirit beasts. The 10 core theories were useless. Besides, some of that supposed knowledge was already common among the big players, but they weren't sharing. It turned out that Yu Xiaojiang still had something to offer even if he had stolen a lot of family knowledge. But after studying at the Royal Academy, I discovered that every major force would learn and accumulate knowledge about these soul beasts. And it is broader and deeper than what the master taught. What's more, the knowledge about twin martial spirits was obtained from Bibi Dong. I don't know what anyone sees in Yu Xiaojiang. He somehow managed to get both Bibi Dong and Lu Erlong head over heels for him. Dai Yao scoffed. Compared to his academic chops, his game with the ladies was on another level. A true master. Maybe I should take some notes from Yu Xiaojiang, Dai Yao mused. When he wasn't studying, he was training. He was pushing himself to the limit, spending hours in the water, his skin wrinkling. Even though he was beat, he could feel his soul power growing, and that made all the exhaustion melt away. It wasn't until they returned from the cafeteria that day that Feng Wudong learned Dai Yao's life experience and experiences. Dai Yao may have had a noble title, but he was living worse than a common soul master. At least she had parents who cared about her, but Dai Yao had lost his mother, and his father was like a stranger. He had to play dumb around the clock, always watching out for the queen. Poor thing, Feng Wudong thought, feeling a pang of sympathy. She knew Dai Yao didn't stand a chance in the battle for the throne, and all this effort was ultimately pointless. She once came to the waterfall and asked Dai Yao puzzledly, "You know you have no hope, why do you still work so hard?" "You never know until you try," Dai Yao replied, a faint smile on his face, eyes closed against the water pressure. Dai Yao might be small, but from that moment on, Feng Wudong saw him as a giant. A few days later, Zhu Zhuqing came back. She was glowing with confidence after getting her first soul ring, and she challenged Dai Yao to another duel. Dai Yao won. Of course, Zhu Zhuqing's first soul skill, Netherworld 100 Claws, was useless against Dai Yao's White Tiger Barrier. Plus, Dai Yao's explosive speed could keep up with her. Zhu Zhuqing couldn't see any way to win, so she gave up with a smile. However, after knowing what happened to Dai Yao, the joy of obtaining the first soul ring was immediately diluted. The two looked at each other, each understanding the other's situation. "Let's do this together," Dai Yao said with an encouraging smile, offering his hand. "Okay, let's go." A faint smile touched Zhu Zhuqing's lips as she took his hand and rested her head on his shoulder. Feng Wudong was the only one who wasn't exactly thrilled. Thinking about the single dog that Dai Yao once said to describe this situation, she became very angry. The second prince's residence, waterside pavilion by the pool. Yaming stood by the river with his hands behind his back and asked, "What's Dai Yao been up to lately?" That the fat man, standing nearby, replied to the second prince's question. "Dai Yao hasn't been doing much. Ever since we embarrassed him in the cafeteria, he's been holed up in the training environment, never leaving." Some low-level soul master brings him meals, that's it. The second prince turned around, surprised. He hasn't left. I didn't think he had it in him to take that kind of humiliation. The second prince was caught off guard, unsure what to make of it. He wasn't concerned about Dai Yao's potential. After all, 6 years couldn't be made up for with talent alone. But Dai Yao's willingness to endure shame was unnerving. He was expecting a young, arrogant kid. His plan was to humiliate Dai Yao publicly, push him to the edge, and then crush him. He would do the same to Zhu Zhuqing, attacking their strength and dignity. He didn't think Dai Yao could survive that kind of comprehensive humiliation. He figured he'd care about his pride enough to off himself rather than face the truth, but after being humiliated in the cafeteria, Dai Yao just went back to training. I can't let him train in peace, the second prince thought. After a lot of thinking, there wasn't anything he could do. As long as Dai Yao didn't come out looking for a fight, his plan was useless. How did our family end up with such a coward? The second prince thought angrily. There was only one option. Fatty, from now on, you're going to challenge Dai Yao at his training spot. If he doesn't accept, you're going to provoke him so he can't train. I don't care, I refuse to believe he is the reincarnation of a tortoise. The second prince said fiercely, in the Royal Academy, you can't just fight wherever you want. You have to use the designated arena. The most famous of those arenas in the Star Luo Empire is the White Tiger Duel Arena. Xingluo's All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Tournament has been held here. The White Tiger Duel Arena is a dream for many soul masters at the academy. To compete there is the honor of their lives. The fat man hesitated. Your Highness, I'm a great soul master. Isn't it a bit much to challenge a level 1 soul master like that? The second prince sighed. He was really short on manpower. All he had was Fatty, a level 2 soul master. There were great soul masters among the nobles, but even though they were loyal, they'd never stoop this low. He said, Fatty, you know how things are. The nobles won't lift a finger. You're the only one I can count on. Pride doesn't matter. Don't worry, when I take the throne, I'll make you a noble. It turned out that the fat man was the civilian soul master that Nantian said sold himself to the nobles in order to seek glory. The fat man looked sheepish, hesitated, and finally gritted his teeth. Thank you for the faith you have in me, Your Highness. I won't let you down. Evening, Dai Yao's training area. Dai Yao, sitting under the waterfall, heard movement in the forest. Opening his eyes, he saw Fatty and his crew. A mocking voice echoed. Haven't seen you in days. Thought you'd gone into hibernation. The second prince sent me to check on you. Fatty looked around at Dai Yao's Spartan living conditions and burst out laughing. Dai Yao didn't even react. He closed his eyes and kept focusing his soul power to withstand the water pressure. Fatty got furious that Dai Yao was ignoring him. As a civilian soul master, he'd always been looked down on, but ever since he'd become the second prince's lackey, everyone had been calling him Brother Fatty, except for the first prince's people. Why was Dai Yao acting so superior? Just because he was a prince? He was putting on airs even when he was about to lose. Remembering the second prince's orders, he swallowed his anger and sneered. Fourth Highness, why are you such a coward? I'm challenging you right now. You gonna take it or what? The guys trailing Fatty were surprised that a great soul master was challenging a level 1 soul master, and they shot Fatty weird looks, but Fatty was committed and ignored them. He snickered, seeing that Dai Yao was still silent. The second prince had figured Dai Yao wouldn't accept the challenge. All he had to do was keep harassing Dai Yao and disrupt his training, so he kept taunting, you coward, you're weaker than a mouse. You're embarrassing the whole royal family. Even though everyone else despised Fatty's behavior, they started to feel contempt for Dai Yao when he didn't defend himself from the insults. You can kill a scholar, but you can't humiliate him, and anyone with a shred of pride would fight back. And Dai Yao was a noble. After all, nobles valued their honor and dignity above all else. Chapter 34 Yi Nantian. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 34 Yi Nantian. The fat guy kept his insults coming, but Dai Yao remained still, like a meditating monk, completely unfazed. Everyone looked down on Dai Yao even more. It's humiliating. A prince, being cursed at like that and not saying a word. Some people sneered at Dai Yao's silence. We're all nobles, but he's brought shame on all of us. He doesn't deserve the title. One noble soul master said angrily. He's just a first-level soul master, after all. If a great soul master challenged him, he wouldn't dare accept it. Knowing when to back down is a sign of intelligence, someone countered, appreciating Dai Yao's strategy. Opinions were divided, but Dai Yao remained silent beneath the waterfall. The fat guy, growing more agitated, yelled, "You coward! You're spineless! You're a low-down, yellow-bellied coward! You!" He pulled out every insult he knew, marveling at his own colorful vocabulary, realizing he'd never been so creative with his cursing. His voice rose and fell like he was performing a song. He was practically a walking thesaurus of insults. As the fat guy's tirade continued, people started to pity Dai Yao instead of despising him. It was hard to listen to, let alone be the target of. They seemed to have discovered a whole new level of insults. They watched the fat guy with morbid curiosity, eager to expand their own limited cursing vocabularies, yet Dai Yao still sat there, a stone statue. The fat guy was starting to crack. His verbal attack seemed to have no effect on Dai Yao. He spewed out insults, his neck swelling, his face reddening, practically foaming at the mouth, but Dai Yao didn't move an inch. Blood rushed to the fat guy's head, and he stumbled, dizzy. Remember, he'd been going at it for over 10 minutes. He was practically an esports champion of trash talk. No matter how vile he got, Dai Yao simply ignored him. He tried everything, but nothing worked. Finally, the fat guy collapsed, sitting on the ground, defeated. "Your Highness," he pleaded, "I'm begging you. Acknowledge me. I'm out of insults." Just then, Dai Yao's soul power gave out. The barrier protecting him flickered and vanished. The full force of the waterfall slammed down, washing him away. Dai Yao surfaced and shouted to the fat guy. "Are you worried about me? Are you giving up? Do you want to accept the duel?" Hearing Dai Yao's voice, the fat guy cheered, scrambling to the water's edge like a man dying of thirst finding water. "No, I was just asking if you were thirsty. I can get you some water." Dai Yao replied with a smile. "Ugh!" The fat guy's eyes rolled back in his head, his brain turned to mush, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Everyone burst out laughing. The fat guy struggled to his feet and finally said to Dai Yao, "Don't think you can avoid the duel forever. His Highness will get you eventually. Just you wait, you'll regret this." A common soul master wasn't allowed to insult a noble, especially a prince, but Dai Yao wasn't your average prince. To become a prince, you needed the backing of a powerful family. Dai Yao's mother was just an ordinary woman, without connections, leaving him isolated. The battle for the throne wasn't just about a prince's strength, it was also about the power behind him. A prince without support wouldn't stand a chance of becoming the star Luo emperor. That's why many weren't betting on Dai Yao. During the royal duels, the other princes' underlings would try to humiliate weaker princes. Even the elders couldn't intervene without a legitimate reason. And the attacking party would make sure there was no way for them to step in. If Dai Yao was bullied by the second prince, not only would the second prince stop it, but the eldest prince would also intervene, so that the council of elders would have no way to intervene. As everyone left, a dripping Dai Yao returned to his house, sat cross-legged, and meditated to recover his soul power. He remembered every insult the fat guy had hurled at him. He wasn't strong enough to fight back. If he'd retaliated, he would have played right into the second prince's hands. The best way to fight back was to stay silent, to train hard and not let the insults affect him. That would defeat the second prince's plan. Dai Yao had kept silent, letting the fat guy humiliate him, pretending it didn't bother him, but inside, he was raging. He didn't care about being insulted himself. But when the fat guy insulted his mother, uncontrollable anger surged within him. Thankfully, he was far away enough that the fat guy couldn't see his expression. Emperor Xingluo, his father, was a stranger to Dai Yao. He had always thought of him as dead, though his mother was of low status and often looked down on. She was precious to Dai Yao, and he wouldn't let anyone tarnish her reputation. But with his current strength, he was no match for the fat guy, especially with the second prince backing him, and he wasn't alone anymore. Zhu Zhuqing was with him. He wouldn't put her in danger for his own sake, he carried not only his own destiny but Zhu Zhuqing's as well. Just wait, fatty. You'll pay for what you did today. Dai Yao vowed to himself. Time passed, and the fat guy became a local celebrity. He was known as a performer at the academy, and people changed their expression when they heard about it. Even the second prince was surprised. Now that the second prince had the fat guy, he wouldn't need to fight against hostile forces. He could just use his reputation as a performer at Fatty Academy, and the opponent would lose his parents before the battle even started. For a moment, the second prince's power was unparalleled. In contrast, Dai Yao's reputation was in tatters. He had become a joke in the Star Luo Royal Academy. Dai Yao's cowardice was infamous. The second prince actively spread rumors, and when the eldest prince found out, he joined in the defamation. Fueled by the two princes, Dai Yao became an object of ridicule. People would often visit his training spot to gawk at the legendary coward. Is that the famous Dai Yao? He's a prince, after all. How can he be so spineless? A new girl looked at Dai Yao training, covering her mouth and giggling. The eldest prince and the second prince look down on you, but fourth princes, you have a chance to fulfill your dream of becoming an imperial concubine. Another woman said teasingly. Get lost. The girl blushed, annoyed. I don't like such a useless man. Ha ha ha, there are advantages to this kind of man. If you tell him to go east, he will not dare to go west. The woman continued to tease Dai Yao's advantages and teased the schoolgirl. Suddenly, a burst of flame sent the women scattering. Do you think the fourth prince likes you? Why don't you take a selfie and take a look at yourselves? You are all crooked and cracked. Who can like you? A fiery red figure appeared between them, her tone aggressive, the yellow soul ring radiating pressure. You. The women were taken aback. What are you doing? Get out of here. Do you want me to make you leave? Feng Wudong snapped, hands on her hips, radiating confidence. The women glared at Feng Wudong, but when they saw the yellow soul ring, their expressions changed, and they fled. Humph, is it fun for two big-breasted and brainless women to mock others for fun? Feng Wudong fumed. Things like this happened every day. Even as an outsider, she couldn't stand it, let alone Dai Yao, who was at the center of it. Thinking of this, she felt sympathy for him. No, it's too hard for him to be alone. I have to help him. Feng Wudong resolved. A few days later, sensing something different in the air, Dai Yao opened his eyes. Standing before him was a tall, imposing man in a red cloak. He stood like a statue, radiating a powerful, domineering aura, like a lion on the savannah. Who are you? Dai Yao asked. Yi Nantian. The man answered, the simple words charged with power that seemed to silence the air. Dai Yao's eyes narrowed. He had heard of Yi Nantian's reputation. As the third most untouchable person in the academy, he was a spiritual leader for many common soul masters. He's probably here to cause trouble, Dai Yao thought, then said, welcome. What can I do for you? Yi Nantian glanced around at Dai Yao, sitting beneath the waterfall, struggling against the water's force. He nodded to himself. Wudong wasn't lying. This kid has something, he said. You took Feng Wudong's training ground. She lost fair and square, but she's one of us. It doesn't mean we're pushovers. I'm here to teach you a lesson. He said this, but he didn't really mean it. When he first heard that Dai Yao had taken Feng Wudong's spot, he'd been ready to fight, but after hearing about the second prince insulting Dai Yao in the cafeteria, he learned the whole story. Feng Wudong had also explained the situation, and he'd been ready to let it go, but Feng Wudong had kept begging him to give Dai Yao some advice. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore, so he'd come to see this boy for himself. If you want my help, you have to prove you're worth it, Yi Nantian thought. Chapter 35 Guidance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Edited content. Yi Nantian was a legend. Around the academy, only those who competed in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite competition had a higher soul power level. Dai Yao's heart sank. He didn't stand a chance against a level 29 attack-type fighting soul master with a top-tier martial soul. Lately, things have been rough. Egged on by the two princes, people kept showing up at his training spot to harass him, calling him out by name. He faced both soul masters and great soul masters, but he refused every challenge. The second prince was behind it all, trying to disrupt his training. If he accepted a duel, win or lose, his opponent would gain fame, leading to more challenges. Dai Yao wouldn't get any peace to train, and the gap between him and Dai Yaming would only widen. Now, here came Yi Nantian. Dai Yao felt a knot in his stomach and said, "Aren't you embarrassed, a great soul master picking on a level 1 soul master?" That Yi Nantian smiled calmly. "I heard you beat Dai Mubai, a level 17 soul master, right after getting your soul ring. I won't use my second soul skill today. How about it?" After so many days, Dai Yao had faced countless provocations. The word duel now triggered a knee-jerk reaction. Agreeing wasn't a casual decision. He had reservations. Those guys just wanted to show off and get famous. Accepting would only cause trouble, but Yi Nantian was different. He stood up for civilian soul masters who were being bullied. As their unofficial leader, he had a legitimate reason, plus, the chance to learn from a master was rare. "Okay, I accept. You've got guts. Most people run scared when they hear my name. You dared to accept. You're not the coward people say you are." Yi Nantian's grin was wide, and he looked at Dai Yao with respect. They faced each other on the shore, ready to fight. The pool's edge was wide enough for a duel. Dai Yao, level 12 battle soul master, martial soul white tiger, ready for your guidance. Dai Yao, powered by his martial soul, bowed. Yi Nantian lowered his hands, and a powerful aura surged from him. Martial soul, activate. That with a roar, he grew bigger, his already large body becoming even more massive, his hair thick and wild like a lion's mane. He stood tall. Level 29 attack-type battle soul master, martial soul black armor mad lion. Before he finished, Dai Yao shot forward with an explosive step, fast as lightning. Fast. Yi Nantian was surprised. He moved like an agility attack soul master. How did this kid do that? With that speed and those self-made soul skills, this punch was no joke. Yi Nantian dropped his arrogance and realized how strong Dai Yao was. He crossed his arms to defend, but something felt off. The punch, despite looking fierce, barely registered. It was like a breeze, no power behind it. Is that it? Yi Nantian was confused, but then it clicked. It was a feint. The next punch was the real attack. Dai Yao's eyes lit up, his soul power surging. He used the feint to trick Yi Nantian, then spun and punched with all his might into his chest, aiming for the gap under Yi Nantian's arms. Baji collapse. Dai Yao yelled, a dull thud echoed, and the force kicked up dust, covering Yi Nantian. Dai Yao felt a surge of excitement. He believed in his Baji collapse. Even Dai Mubai, at level 17, couldn't handle it in a one-on-one fight between first-level soul masters. When he fought Dai Mubai's experience and mix of real and fake moves had overwhelmed him, making him dance like a puppet. He had learned from that defeat. He remembered the feint attacks and used them today for the first time, and it worked. But as the dust settled, Dai Yao was shocked. Yi Nantian stood there, untouched. Then he unleashed a massive blow, radiating the terrifying power of an ancient beast. 2 yellow soul rings appeared around Yi Nantian, the first glowing brightly. After the attack, Yi Nantian said, "Good hit. For a level 1 soul master, that's some serious power. If I hadn't used my first soul skill, Mad Lion Transformation, I'd be hurting right now." Dai Yao's spirits dropped. He hadn't expected his best shot to be blocked so easily. Even with Yi Nantian's age and strength advantage, the air grew heavy. The real fight was just starting. With the Mad Lion Transformation, Yi Nantian's speed, strength, everything increased. He was like a smaller version of the White Tiger King Kong transformation. In the following exchanges, Dai Yao used Baji collapse several times. He landed some hits, but victory was uncertain, and Baji collapse took time and a lot of soul power, so he couldn't use it constantly. He had to rely on explosive steps to evade Yi Nantian. While Dai Yao grew frustrated, Nantian was even more surprised. He had agreed to help Feng Wudong, but he wasn't holding back. Without using his second soul skill, he was giving it his all. Dai Yao was like an eel. He'd sneak in a Baji collapse when he could, then dart away with his explosive steps before Nantian could counterattack. Nantian was slower and couldn't catch him. It drove him crazy. "Okay, kid, I'll get you," he growled to himself. As Dai Yao circled, he spotted a major opening in Nantian's defense. Without hesitation, he shot forward and unleashed Baji collapse. Nantian smirked. He had baited Dai Yao. Still green, Nantian sighed. He braced his muscles and took Dai Yao's punch head-on. The force made his chest ache. He had expected the strength, but not the pain. Still, his plan had worked. He reached out, a victorious grin on his face. "You've been punching me this whole time. Time to pay you back." Dai Yao sensed danger. If Nantian wrapped him up, he'd be trapped. Nantian was too big and strong for a close-quarters fight. Warning bells rang in his head, but he couldn't see a way out. Explosive step wouldn't work, the grab was too fast. Nantian felt a surge of joy, eager to pummel Dai Yao, but his smile froze. He felt intense pressure, an irresistible force coming from deep within his martial soul. A pair of snow-white wings appeared behind Dai Yao. In a split second, Dai Yao shifted his body, narrowly avoiding Nantian's embrace. Huff, huff. After escaping, Dai Yao breathed hard, sweat dripping. His carelessness had almost cost him the match. If he hadn't activated the second form of his martial soul, he might have lost. He composed himself. Again, Nantian looked shocked. "Is that your true martial soul?" Dai Yao nodded. Nantian was reeling. He was used to his martial soul dominating others. This was the first time he had felt suppressed. His martial soul was top tier. Even against the elder and second princes, he hadn't felt this kind of pressure, but he felt it from Dai Yao. He gave Dai Yao a complicated look, deactivated his martial soul, and said, "I'm done." Huh? Dai Yao was confused. They had been fighting hard. Why stop now? "If I just defend, you can't hurt me, and I can't catch you. It'll just be a draw," Nantian said, explaining his reasoning. He couldn't help adding, "You're a slippery eel." Dai Yao deactivated his martial soul, walked over to Nantian, bowed, and said, "Thank you, brother Nantian." Nantian had played fair during the fight, not using any power beyond a level 1 soul master, and Dai Yao sensed good intentions. Nantian had said he'd teach him a lesson, but he hadn't brought a crowd, saving Dai Yao some face. He was already a laughingstock at the academy. Nantian didn't need to pile on. Nantian nodded. "You're talented and smart. Feng Wudong asked me to give you some guidance." Hearing that Feng Wudong had sent him, Dai Yao felt grateful. He swallowed his emotions and asked Nantian, "Brother Nantian, what am I missing?" Nantian thought for a moment. "Your self-made soul skills make you unbeatable among level 1 soul masters." He paused, then said seriously, "But you're up against the second prince. The gap is too big. Even I can't beat him. The second prince is only level 25, but he has a soul bone that makes him incredibly strong. Your skills are enough for level 1 fights, but you can't threaten a great soul master." Dai Yao was stunned. He had noticed that in their fight, even his strongest Baji collapse hadn't done much damage to Nantian. And Nantian was holding back. Nantian continued, "It's not just your skills. It's your soul power. How can your level 12 compare to his level 25? Honestly, I don't think you can beat the second prince." Dai Yao felt crushed by Nantian's words. He forced a smile and asked, "Maybe not now, but I won't give up." "Good." Nantian's face lit up. "If you gave up, I'd be disappointed. I'm just a civilian soul master without the fancy training of the nobles, but I believe I can be better than them. Your Baji collapse has potential. I know a soul skill that uses punches. His punches aren't as strong as yours, but he uses a special technique called Njin, hidden energy. Everyone who fought him suffered badly. If you add hidden energy to your Baji collapse, it'll be a killer move. Even against great soul masters, you'll have a chance, Yi Nantian was encouraging. Thank you, brother Nantian, Dai Yao said, grateful. Yi Nantian's advice showed Dai Yao the way forward. Adding hidden energy to Baji collapse would give him a better chance against the second prince. Okay, I've said my piece. Now Feng Wudong will leave me alone. Yi Nantian looked scared, as if Feng Wudong was a monster. I really want to punch you. Your hits hurt. Yi Nantian said to Dai Yao, gritting his teeth. No harm intended, brother Nantian. Dai Yao grinned nervously, his soul power ready to activate explosive steps if needed. I'm kidding. See you around. Yi Nantian laughed, turned, and left, waving casually. Oh, one more thing, he added, turning back. When we're at the same level, we have to fight. It's frustrating holding back. Then he vanished into the trees. Dai Yao watched him go, then returned to the waterfall. The cold water washed over him, and his thoughts calmed. Beating Dai Mubai had made him a little cocky, but today, fighting Yi Nantian, even with the level restriction, showed him how different great soul masters were, and the second prince was a great soul master with soul bones. Dai Yao rubbed his forehead. The difference felt overwhelming. No matter what, I'll train and close the gap. I'll get stronger than him. He raised his fist. I need to master hidden energy for Baji collapse. 4,000 words, 2 chapters in 1. Chapter 36 3 years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Edited content. Since my soul power became liquid, I've been hesitant to use it to boost my Baji bang. The power's just too intense, and I was afraid my body couldn't handle it. After getting to the academy, I took some time to recover, and my body's finally up to trying it out with liquid soul power. Time to go for it. I channeled the liquid soul power from my core into my right arm. Almost immediately, my right arm felt like it was swelling, packed with immense energy. I headed to the nearby woods and found a huge rock. I punched it, thwack, the rock caved in, and my right arm went numb from the impact. Looking at the boulder, I felt a pang of disappointment. The damage was only about 50% better than a regular Baji bang, still not enough to threaten a great soul master. Using liquid soul power for Baji bang is a dead end. Guess I'll have to focus on Njin, I thought, frustrated. In fighting to break the sky, Xiaoyan's Baji collapse wasn't just powerful, it had a hidden force that made it unpredictable. Njin, or hidden energy, is exactly what it sounds like, power lurking beneath the surface. It seems like a regular punch, but it contains incredible force. When it connects, the target feels pain deep inside, which then radiates outwards. The pain intensifies, and for those unprepared, it can cause instant paralysis. Yi Nantian's guidance was spot on and aligned with my own thinking. I'd considered Njin before, but my attempts had failed, so I'd given up, but Yi Nantian's advice gave me a new angle. Compressed soul power, compress the soul power, then deliver it into the opponent's body with the punch, causing an internal explosion and immense pain, but compressing soul power puts a huge strain on the body. If you're not careful, it can explode and cause permanent damage. That's why few people create their own soul skills. Blindly experimenting is a recipe for physical injury, potentially ending a soul master's career, but I'm different. I have the Chaos Green Lotus to protect me. Even if I get hurt, I can recover. Without hesitation, I started converting my liquid soul power back into a gaseous state. Liquid's too powerful. A failed compression would be catastrophic. Qinglian can heal me, but it'll take longer, so minimizing damage is key. I moved the gaseous soul power into my arms, focused, and began to compress it slowly, but the more I compressed, the stronger the repulsion between the soul particles became. The sheer energy made me feel dizzy. Oh, crap. I cursed internally as the soul power spiraled out of control and exploded in my arm. A shockwave ripped through the forest, spreading outwards. The snow on the ground vanished, leaving only the frozen earth. Trees around me were flattened. A circle of bare ground, centered on me, appeared. Clutching my right hand in agony, my arm throbbing, I gasped for breath. Chaos Qinglian, heal me. That the green lotus in my mind erupted with green light, flowing towards my right arm. A cool sensation spread, like a spring breeze. bringing life back. The pain lessened dramatically, but I didn't stop. My right arm was injured, but I still had my left. I could try again. If that failed, I'd have to wait until I fully recovered. Following the same steps, I slowly compressed my soul power. Just when it was about to explode, I saw an opening and quickly punched the boulder. This body collapse was weaker than the first, leaving only a small dent. Did it work? Exhausted from the intense concentration, I panted heavily, looking at the mark on the rock. Approaching the boulder, nothing seemed unusual. The power was clearly less, understandable, since the first used liquid soul power, but when I walked behind the boulder, I was shocked. The back was chipped and cracked, with bits of gravel falling to the ground. The force of the blow had penetrated the rock and transmitted to the other side. The interior must be a mess. Using my soul power, I slowly chipped away at the boulder. 3 hours later, it split open. The scene inside was incredible. Starting from the point of impact, a cone-shaped section of fragmented stone reached to the back. My punch had filled the boulder with dark energy. The first punch, meanwhile, had left only a few shallow lines around the dent. The difference was night and day. The power of Nantian was terrifying. I did it. I thought, elated. Okay, with this first success, mastering Nantian is within reach. If I can control it, I actually have a shot at beating Yaming. I clenched my good hand, envisioning the future. 3 years later, a soaking wet figure sat beneath a waterfall. He was disheveled, but his spirit shone through. His muscles were toned, his posture straight, his face determined. His eyes were sharp, like cold stars. This was Yao, now 9 years old. The moment is here, that I said silently, calming myself. The soul power within me surged like the ocean, crashing against a barrier. Then, a powerful force erupted. The waterfall momentarily reversed, colliding with the falling water before crashing back into the pool with a deafening roar. Like a caged bird set free, my body felt lighter. The surging soul power gradually subsided. Finally broke through. A genuine smile spread across my face. 3 years of non-stop training had led to this. My soul power had finally reached level 20. Gaining 9 levels in 3 years is considered genius, and my soul power is in liquid form, meaning I need way more than your average soul master. Feeling the full power within me, I knew it was time to find my second soul ring. Chapter 37 Purple Lotus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 37, Purple Lotus. Dai Yao's Bajibang had become seriously powerful over the last 3 years. Nantian figured it'd give even some high-level soul masters a real headache, but before he went after his second soul ring, Dai Yao had something else to deal with. He'd noticed something weird happening inside his head. Every time his soul power went up a level, one more petal would bloom on the chaos green lotus in his mind. Now he was at level 20, and he had no idea what the lotus was up to. He dove into his spiritual world and found himself face to face with the chaos green lotus. The green lotus slowly unfurled its 10th petal, and in that instant, the whole world seemed lit up with blue light. Even the sacred white tiger folded its wings, the whole beast shivering, hidden away in the shadow of its own feathers. When the light faded, the flowers started to change color, going from green to purple until it was a full-blown purple lotus. The purple lotus broke free from its roots and drifted to the ground, while the roots themselves withered away into dust. Dai Yao picked up the purple lotus and gave it a good look. Its petals stretched out, radiating a crazy allure. What's this thing even for? Dai Yao stared, speechless. He'd rather have the green lotus back, even if he didn't know what that did either. As soon as Dai Yao lifted the purple lotus, a tiny green sprout popped up from the withered roots, growing fast. In just a few seconds, another chaos green lotus was there, back in its place. 12 leaves, with the flower bud all wrapped up tight. Dai Yao slowly realized that every time he leveled up, the green lotus would grow a petal. And when it hit 10, it'd turn into a lotus. This time it was purple. What kind of lotus would it be next time? He couldn't help but wonder. He snapped back to reality, and with a thought, the purple lotus appeared in his hand. Okay, so this thing is definitely a treasure. In the original story, Tang Sen used those special herbs from the ice and fire springs to power up the 7 devils. He even managed to upgrade Ning Rongrong's martial spirit, turning her 7 treasures glazed pagoda into a 9 treasures one. So what does this purple lotus do? Da Yao wondered. Do I have to go ask Tang San? Get him to tell me what this thing's good for? Then he smiled, a little helpless. Knowing Tang San, he'd probably hate my guts. The guy strips those ice and fire springs clean, not even leaving the roots. He'd be super jealous if he knew I had something like this. If he finds out about the purple lotus, he'll definitely try to take it from me when he becomes a god. Guess I'll have to figure this out on my own, Da Yao said, touching his chin. He went back through the waterfall and into the cave. Zhu Zhuqing, who was sitting in meditation, noticed him come in. She opened her eyes, saw that Da Yao was glowing with a different energy, and exclaimed, "You did it. You broke through." She jumped into his arms, not caring that he was wet, and smiled, a rare sight on her usually cold face. Zhu Zhuqing had really grown up in the past 3 years. You could see the shape of the woman she'd become, and her features were starting to become seriously captivating. She got a lot of attention at school, but she always kept her distance, earning herself the nickname Ice Queen. Compared to the famous Zhu Zhuqing, Da Yao's reputation was in the toilet. Everyone still thought he was a coward, and it had been that way for 3 years. He hadn't accepted a single challenge in all that time, and the other students never let him forget it. Everyone knew that Zhu Zhuqing was engaged to the 4th prince, Da Yao. They thought it was a waste, a beautiful flower stuck in some cow dung. They all felt bad for her, having to be engaged to a loser. If those guys could see the Ice Queen smiling like this, wrapped in Da Yao's arms, they'd be heartbroken. Da Yao hugged her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, and whispered, "I'm sorry. You've had it rough these last 3 years. My reputation's dragged you down, and you've had to put up with a lot of crap because of me." But Zhu Zhuqing shook her head. "You're the one who's been wronged. You're the one who's taken the heat, the one who's had people staring at you." She'd seen the changes in Da Yao over the last 3 years, all those hours practicing, pushing himself until his soul power was gone, falling into the water a million times, but always getting back up. When he was ready to go, he was like a sword pulled from its sheath, with a terrifying, unstoppable force. He had confidence like she had never seen before, a bone-deep confidence built from countless failures, and countless recoveries. Looking at the handsome guy in front of her, Zhu Zhuqing felt a surge of pride. Everyone else thought he was a coward, but she saw a hero who wouldn't back down from anything. After a little while, they walked out of the cave. Zhu Zhuqing looked up at the sky and said, a little sadly, "I have to go. I need to head home to get my second soul ring." That it wasn't just Da Yao who'd hit level 20 in the last 3 years. Zhu Zhuqing had, too. Thanks to his help, she'd actually gotten there even faster than him. Since her family lived far away, she needed to get horses and carriages ready. Zhu Zhuqing gave Da Yao one last hug, whispering, "See you when we're both great soul masters." Watching her go, Da Yao felt sad to see her leave, but more than that, he couldn't wait until they were together again as great soul masters. Just then, someone grabbed his shoulder. Scaring the crap out of him, he turned around and saw a bright, smiling face, wearing bright red clothes, with fiery red hair. It was Feng Wudong. Feng Wudong had grown up too, and was even more beautiful than she was before. She had guys chasing her all the time. But most of those rich guys just wanted her as a mistress, so, Feng Wudong didn't give them the time of day. She was 12 years old now, and her soul power was at level 19. She kept her hand on Da Yao's shoulder, watching him with a playful look. Still staring? She's practically gone already. Da Yao just rolled his eyes. After all these years, he and Feng Wudong were practically siblings. Sometimes she'd even help him check out the pretty girls at school. Of course, they did all that behind Zhu Zhuqing's back. He pulled her hand off his shoulder and said, like the jerk he sometimes acted like, "Hey, what do you expect? I have a fiancé, remember? Are you jealous, single?" Hearing the word single, Feng Wudong got a little pissed. Whose fault is it that your families have those messed up rules? Getting engaged when you're, 6 years old? After they bickered for a while, Da Yao said, "I hit level 20. I'm going back to my family in a few days to get my second soul ring." Feng Wudong looked surprised when she heard that Da Yao had broken through, then sighed. "You rich kids are so lucky. Zhu Zhuqing broke through not long ago, and now you're level 22. It's annoying how different everyone is. I'm 3 years older than you, but my soul power's a whole level lower. She said, annoyed. Just then, a staggering figure came running out of the woods, looking panicked. It was a male student. He glanced at Dai Yao with open contempt, then looked at Feng Wudong. Something terrible happened. Zhu Zhuqing is about to be. Chapter 38 Zhu Zhuqing's Crisis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Crap. Zhu Zhuqing's about to get killed by her sister, Zhu Zhuqing, in the arena. The guy looked panicked. He was in Feng Wudong's class and knew Zhu Zhuqing, so he rushed over to warn her. As for Dai Yao, Zhu Zhuqing's fiancé, the guy just saw him as a spineless loser. Telling him anything would be a waste of breath. Where are they? Dai Yao froze at the news, then his face hardened as he grilled the guy. 3 years hadn't dulled the hatred between him and the second prince, even if he had been holed up training that whole time. What's the point of telling you? The guy sneered at Dai Yao. Dai Yao's jaw clenched, veins popping. He was burning with hatred for Dai Yaming and his cronies. He'd swallowed countless insults the past 3 years. He'd had to bite his tongue even when they trashed his mom, but this thing with Zhu Zhuqing. This was the last straw. If he still preached patience with his fiancée in danger, he really would be a coward. He knew what these students thought of him, a weakling. Without wasting time on explanations, he unleashed his level 20 soul power and snapped, just tell me where they are. A surge of power radiated from Dai Yao. Feng Wudong held up okay, but the other guys started gasping. That's some serious soul power. Is this really the loser everyone talks about? He stared, shocked, and stammered, Arena number 1. Knowing where to go, he instantly channeled his martial spirit, took off like a shot, and with his wings, zoomed towards the arena like a bolt of white lightning. The guy just stood there, dumbfounded. Dai Yao's performance had completely shattered his image of him. Is he really the coward they say? I felt real fear just now from his martial spirit. Feng Wudong smiled faintly. He's not a coward. He's got more important stuff on his mind than some stupid reputation. Star Luo Royal Academy. The arena was packed, students filled the stands, a mix of commoners and nobles, all watching the fight with rapt attention. And everyone agreed both of the girls duking it out were seriously gorgeous. The 2 girls in the arena were striking, one older and more mature, the other younger and more petite. One was all fire and passion, the other, cool as ice. The first girl, the older one, had a killer figure and bedroom eyes. Her clothes were painted on, a skin-tight black outfit showed off every curve. Her teasing gestures had the crowd hollering every few seconds. That was Zhu Zhuqing. The other woman was smaller. Even though she was young, you could already tell she was going to be a total knockout, but her face was like stone, and she projected a vibe of pure frost. This ice queen had plenty of fans at the academy too. She was Zhu Zhuqing. Zhu Zhuqing was engaged to a celebrity, while Zhu Zhuqing was stuck with a nobody. Despite this, Zhu Zhuqing remained loyal to her fiancé, which had countless admirers tearing their hair out. Zhu Zhuqing grinned, her eyes gleaming. Well, look who it is. I didn't think I'd see you here. 3 years later, and you come with such a big surprise. Not long ago, Zhu Zhuqing had broken through to level 20 and was getting ready to go back home to get her second soul ring. The academy was arranging a carriage for her, and somehow, the news leaked, hearing that Zhu Zhuqing had hit level 20 threw her for a loop. She was only at level 27 now, and Zhu Zhuqing was 3 or 4 years younger than her. All she needed was one more soul ring to become a great soul master like her. Zhu Zhuqing's talent made her green with envy. Why was God so unfair? Why did Zhu Zhuqing get all the good stuff instead of her? If she brought Zhu Zhuqing down, maybe she could help her fiancé, Dai Yaming, win the fight between the second prince and the eldest prince. She could pay back Zhu Zhuqing for all the years of humiliation. 2 yellow soul rings spun around Zhu Zhuqing. She strutted forward, oozing confidence, and activated her first soul skill. Her eyes turned cold. First soul skill, 100 Claws of the Netherworld. She morphed into a blur of purple, charging at Zhu Zhuqing. Zhu Zhuqing was on her last legs, they'd been going at it for a while. Her soul power was way lower than Zhu Zhuqing's, and she didn't have her second soul ring yet. Zhu Zhuqing had her beat, she was already battered and bruised. Gritting her teeth, she ignored the pain from her dislocated right arm, forced herself to activate her first soul skill, and lunged at Zhu Zhuqing with one good hand. Predictably, Zhu Zhuqing was sent flying, crashing to the ground and coughing up blood. Like a broken rose, she possessed a fragile beauty that made the audience's hearts ache. Zhu Zhuqing smirked and sauntered towards Zhu Zhuqing. Zhu Zhuqing struggled to crawl backwards, every inch agony. The last hit had done some serious damage. She had a deep gash on her arm, down to the bone. But by focusing her soul power, she could dull the pain. Too bad, dear sister. If your loser fiancé wasn't such a coward, maybe next year at this time we'd be celebrating the anniversary of your death. Zhu Zhuqing laughed like a maniac, looking down at the suffering Zhu Zhuqing. In her mind, she was the one being beaten and humiliated by Zhu Zhuqing. She paused, then said, almost disappointed, looks like your fiancé isn't coming. What a deadbeat, that the crowd was starting to get ticked off. She's way too good for him. The fourth prince has no guts. His fiancé is getting her butt kicked, and he's nowhere to be seen. Yeah, he's making all of us guys look bad. Well, I can see why the fourth prince isn't here. A great soul master would wipe the floor with him. Everyone glared at the guy who said that. You're just like the fourth prince, a total chicken. A senior woman gave a warning to the younger girls, ladies, keep your eyes peeled. Stay away from guys like that. Even if your martial spirit isn't great, even if you're not the strongest, you still need to be responsible. That the fat guy said, he's not coming, your majesty. I tried to provoke him for 2 years in his training spot. Even knowing I'm a great soul master, he never took the bait. Your majesty's soul power is higher than mine. He's not gonna show. Zhu Zhuqing stared at Zhu Zhuqing and finally smiled for real. Sis, it looks like you have terrible taste in men. Time to say goodbye to this world. And don't come back to the Zhu family in your next life. Chapter 39, Furious. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 39, Furious. Zhu Zhuqing's first soul ring blazed as her fingers morphed into 5 razor-sharp daggers, aimed straight at Zhu Zhuqing. Seeing the attack coming, Zhu Zhuqing closed her eyes, resigned. She didn't know if Dai Yao would come to save her. After 9 years of waiting, Dai Yao had finally become a great soul master, a sliver of hope to avenge himself on the queen. If he showed up now, they'd only end up as doomed lovers, together. After all, everyone knew a soul master couldn't possibly beat a great soul master. It was a choice, 9 years of revenge on one side, her life on the other. She didn't know what Dai Yao would choose, but, selfishly, she hoped he'd come. Even just seeing him in the crowd would prove she mattered to him, even a little. The claws of the netherworld, reeking of death, closed in, and Zhu Zhuqing's heart sank. Guess Dai Yao wasn't coming. A flash of white lightning cut through the sky, slamming into the arena's center, kicking up a cloud of dust and smoke. The sudden interruption grabbed everyone's attention. People jumped to their feet, craning their necks to see what had happened. Zhu Zhuqing frowned, sensing a familiar energy in the smoke, the white tiger martial soul. As the smoke cleared, a white shield shimmered into view, then the shield vanished, and Zhu Zhuqing was shielded by a figure. A wave of disappointment rippled through the noble soul masters in the audience. They'd missed their chance to play hero. When the figure turned, Zhu Zhuqing gasped, Dai Yao. Dai Yao. Isn't that the fourth prince? The notoriously useless one. That the name sparked a buzz. The fourth prince was known as a coward, constantly challenged but always refusing to fight, but the man in the arena was nothing like they'd imagined. He had sharp, determined eyes and an impressive bearing, radiating confidence. He was a strikingly handsome young man. How could this be the same coward? Even Zhu Zhuqing was stunned. Looking at the injured Zhu Zhuqing, Dai Yao said, his voice thick with regret, I'm sorry I'm late. Hearing his voice, Zhu Zhuqing opened her eyes. Seeing his face, right there in front of her, she burst into tears. Let me get you out of here. Get healed, and leave the rest to me, Dai Yao said gently. No, you haven't gotten your soul ring yet. You can't beat them, Zhu Zhuqing protested, ignoring the pain. Trust me. It'll be okay. He turned to carry Zhu Zhuqing off the stage, but Zhu Zhuqing stopped him. Aren't you being a little presumptuous? This is a duel between my sister and me. You barging in is a huge insult. Wasn't the whole point of this to force me out? Fine, I accept your challenge. I'll take Zhuqing's place. Dai Yao knew their game and decided to play along. Okay. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes lit up. For 2 years, she'd been sending challengers after Dai Yao, but he always refused. Now that she had him, using Zhu Zhuqing as bait, she wouldn't let him weasel out of it. The second prince, who'd been watching him passively, finally spoke, addressing Zhu Zhuqing. Zhuqing, step down. Let Fatty go up. Zhu Zhuqing had burned through her soul power to make sure she hurt Zhu Zhuqing. She probably only had 30% left, plus, Dai Yao apparently had a self-made skill that boosted his speed. He was as fast as an agility-type soul master. Add that to the white tiger martial soul, and Zhu Zhuqing's odds weren't great. Better to be safe and send in a level 25, honestly, he'd rather do it himself. That way, he wouldn't screw it up, but he had to think about appearances. A prince bullying a soul master would only ruin his reputation. His sights were still set on the first prince. He was already in a bad spot. Ruining his reputation now would kill any chance he had. Back in the Kangxi dynasty, when princes were fighting for the throne, the underdog 8th prince built up a reputation as a wise and benevolent leader, which threatened the 4th prince, who would later become Yongzheng. The fat guy practically bounced with eagerness. Thank you, Your Highness. He'd spent the last 3 years trash-talking Dai Yao, trying to get him to fight. It had even messed up his training. He really hated the guy. Today, he'd finally get his chance. He wanted Dai Yao to feel all the frustration he'd built up over the last couple of years. The fat guy waddled onto the stage, eyeing Dai Yao with malice. So, you finally crawled out of your hole. Guess you're not as much of a chicken as everyone says. He was impressed that Dai Yao had risked himself to save Zhu Zhuqing. Dai Yao completely ignored him. He just glared at Dai Yaming and said, today's going to be a bloodbath. Since you sent him to do the job, I'll just collect a little interest first. The fat guy, ignored and insulted, went ballistic. What was a one-ring soul master going to do? You little punk, enjoy it while you can. You're not walking off this stage. He unleashed his martial soul, sending a wave of power rippling out. Lower-level soul masters felt the pressure and pitted Dai Yao for his arrogance. Even at a distance, they could feel the force. What was it like up close? There was no way a soul master could overcome that kind of level difference. It wasn't just the soul power, but the fact that he was missing a soul ring skill. The fat guy preened and told Dai Yao, level 25 war spirit master, Mammoth. Let's do this. An equally powerful force erupted from Dai Yao, activating his martial soul. Dai Yao stood his ground. His face was like ice, and his eyes locked on the fat guy. Dai Yao, level 20 fighting spirit master, white tiger, stared down by Dai Yao. The fat guy felt a twinge of nervousness, like he was being hunted by a predator. Is that the legendary coward? Someone rubbed his eyes and asked, stunned. His companion was equally shocked. Looks like it. How old is he? He's already at level 20. Dai Yao's power ignited another round of chatter. The picture they had of him was shattering before their eyes. Finally reached the climax. I have read all your comments, and when I look back, I have indeed discovered a problem in my writing. Thank you all. I will work hard to correct it and try not to do it again in the future. The 3rd volume is more relaxed, and a girl will appear. De Guyen. Chapter 40 Massacre. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 40, The Beatdown. Fatty was feeling a little nervous. He hadn't expected Dai Yao to hit level 20 in just 3 years. Good thing he hadn't gotten his second soul ring yet, otherwise, this fight would be a real toss-up. Fatty's first yellow soul ring lit up. First soul skill, War Charge. His spirit weapon activated. He gained a ton of weight, and he charged at Dai Yao like a runaway train. Every step shook the ground. A cruel smile spread across his face as he imagined tearing Dai Yao apart. facing the sheer force barreling down on him, Dayao actually felt a surge of excitement. 3 years of brutal training were finally about to pay off, 3 years spent under that waterfall, battling the relentless water pressure. Now, he moved like a nimble fish, dodging and weaving through Fatty's pressure, avoiding the brunt of the attack. Guess all that hard work actually paid off, Dayao thought, a grin creeping onto his face. Using burst step, he shot towards Fatty like a bolt of white lightning. Is he crazy? The spectators thought. A level 1 soul master going toe-to-toe with a great soul master. Like a fly trying to take down a semi-truck. These spoiled rich kids have no real combat experience, a civilian soul master scoffed, dismissing Dayao with a sneer. Decent soul power, but a few screws loose, someone else muttered, shaking his head. Everyone knew that level 1 soul masters were outmatched by great soul masters in both soul power and raw strength. A head-on clash was suicide. The initial surprise at Dayao's soul power level had vanished, replaced by the old impression of him as a weakling and a loser. Just as I thought, a complete waste of space. Zhu Zhuqing stood beside Yaming, a cruel smile on her face, practically drooling with anticipation at Dayao's impending defeat. But Yaming sensed something was off. Dayao was never reckless. Not during his 6 years of quiet suffering or his 3 years of humiliation at the academy. Why would he do this? He wondered, his brow furrowed. Could he actually have a way to take Fatty head-on? His eyes snapped back to the arena, his surprise growing, seeing Dayao charging straight at him. Fatty grinned with glee. Looks like you've got a death wish. Since you're handing me this on a silver platter, I'll be sure to send you straight to hell. Dayao was deaf to the taunts, rage burning in his chest. He channeled all his soul power into his right hand and roared. Baji fist. In the eyes of the scornful onlookers, the two figures closed the distance, colliding with a deafening boom. Fatty barely budged, but Dayao was sent flying backward, stumbling to regain his balance. Seeing Dayao's disheveled appearance, Fatty roared with laughter. With that kind of pathetic strength, you actually thought you could avenge your family? You're a joke. The outcome was exactly what the crowd had expected. Still, they were surprised by the force of Dayao's attack. So, that's why he thought he could go toe-to-toe with a great soul master. He's got some tricks up his sleeve. No point in going head-to-head. Dayao thought silently. But the real power of Baji fist wasn't its raw power, it was the internal force, the engine. Just as Fatty was basking in his arrogance, a jolt of pain shot through his arm. Arg! Fatty's face twisted in agony as sweat poured down his face. An overwhelming force was raging inside his body, paralyzing him. Dayao, who had just recovered his footing, smiled. That's the true power of Baji fist. He crouched, sprang forward, and rushed towards Fatty faster than before. He knew this was a small window, and Fatty would never understand Baji fist, so he had to seize the moment. Once Fatty figured it out, this opportunity would be gone forever. A savage grin spread across Dayao's face. He grabbed Fatty's injured arm and, as Fatty's eyes widened in horror, slammed his elbow into Fatty's elbow. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air, so piercing that it made the spectators wince. The sudden turn of events silenced the entire arena. Fatty's arm was bent backward at an unnatural angle. Clutching his mangled arm, he staggered back, his eyes wide with terror. His hand was destroyed, his strength severely diminished, and the excruciating pain scrambled his mind. He knew he was no match for Dayao now, but Dayao had no intention of letting him off so easily. He stalked toward Fatty, each step like the footfall of the Grim Reaper himself. Fatty stared at Dayao, getting closer and closer, and finally understood. Zhu Zhuqing had toyed with Zhu Zhuqing without mercy, and now Dayao intended to do the same to him. He fought to speak, to surrender. If the referee was paying attention, he could end the match with just a few words, but Dayao gave him no chance. Dayao's face was a mask of fury. Like lightning, he unleashed a Baji fist straight into Fatty's mouth, a blow so powerful that it robbed him of his voice. The punch transformed Fatty's face, his eyes glazed over, teeth flew, and his mouth filled with blood. Only his shallow, ragged breaths proved he was still alive. Dayao's fist was coated in blood, the skin torn, exposing the bone beneath. The force of the blow was clear. This is for my mother. Dayao roared like a wild animal, for the past 3 years, Fatty had not only insulted him but had also repeatedly insulted his mother to goad him into this duel. Dai Yao was not an idiot. He never forgot that his mother's reputation was dragged through the mud. He had bottled it up, and 3 years of rage went into that one punch, but he wasn't done. He gathered his remaining soul power and slammed another Baji fist into Fatty's face. This is for Zhu Zhuqing. Fatty's head cratered into the ground, cracking the tiles around him. With that punch, Fatty's face was unrecognizable, and the bruising on Dai Yao's fist deepened. Still, he didn't stop. He raised his fist and slammed it down. The third punch landed squarely on Fatty's face. This is for me. Fatty's entire head was buried in the arena floor, his body twitching violently. Dai Yao gasped for air and collapsed to his knees, his energy spent. 3 years of pent-up rage had finally been unleashed. The arena was silent, the onlookers staring in stunned disbelief. They had just witnessed a one-ring soul master completely dominate a great soul master in a head-on fight. Dai Yao's 3 punches hadn't just broken Fatty's face, they had shattered their preconceived notions of him as weak. Dai Yao might be kneeling on the ground, but in their eyes, he stood like a demon.